You'll wish you knew this art growth hack sooner. Recently, I finished reading this book, One Small Step Can Change Your Life. And in it, I found the secret sauce to hack your art and grow faster than ever before. Meet Kaizen, a Japanese philosophy that emphasizes continuous incremental improvement. Instead of chasing monumental changes overnight, Kaizen encourages us to take small, deliberate steps toward our goals. Originally made for business, but you'll soon see you can apply these ideas to just about anything. In his book, Dr. Robert Maurer explains how small changes can lead to big results. If I were to distill it all into one idea, I would point to the classic Chinese proverb, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." That is the core idea behind Kaizen, because big ideas, big change, big growth, they're great, but we can't achieve big goals without taking small steps to get there. So I've taken the ideas in this book and compressed them down into 3 simple parts that you can use to hack your life and grow your art faster than ever before. Let's take a look at the first part. Number 1, take small steps. The whole idea of Kaizen is thinking small. If you want to create a character but you haven't done it before, that is a big first step, and you're setting yourself up for disaster. Or let's say it's not your first character, but your goal is to instead get better at making characters in general. That is a terrible goal. It's way too general. So what is a small step version of that? You might think, oh, okay, fine, I'll just start with the face then. Well, faces are actually pretty complex as well. We literally have a part of our brain that recognizes faces and tells us when a face is even slightly off. So faces are probably too big of a problem as well. Okay, Follygon, so what should we do? Hey, great question. Thank you for asking. Let's keep narrowing it down. So what on the face is something you could work on? Just one part. Eyes. There you go. Now we're getting closer. Can we be even more specific than that? Eyelids. You might be laughing, but I am dead serious. Okay, more specific. I want to understand how eyelids work. There we go, we did it. We found one small thing that we can work on. One small step to get better at creating characters. A character is made of a ton of these little complex parts, and when you try to tackle everything at once, you end up accomplishing nothing. Chase 2 rabbits, catch none. Or in this case, chase hundreds of rabbits and get really tired and give up. Going in with this mentality of one small thing at a time is how you create big changes, and it's the core of Kaizen. One of my favorite quotes of all time is by author Pierce Brown. I keep this quote framed on the table behind me in my office, and for context, it appears at the end of one of his books. Once I thought that writing this book would be impossible. It was a skyscraper, massive and complete and unbearably far off. It taunted me from the horizon. But do we ever look at such buildings and assume they sprung up overnight? No, we've seen the traffic congestion that attends them, the skeleton of beams and girders, the swarm of builders, and the rattle of cranes. Everything grand is made from a series of ugly little moments. Everything worthwhile by hours of self-doubt and days of drudgery. All the works by people you and I admire sit atop a foundation of failures. So whatever your project, whatever your struggle, whatever your dream, keep toiling, because the world needs your skyscraper. Per aspera, ad astra, which means through struggle to the stars. And I keep this quote close by me at all times because they are words that I live by. So when facing a large goal, narrow it down more and more until you can't go any further. Number 2, take small actions. The hardest thing is just getting started. 2 stories for you, one very embarrassing and one I'm proud of. So I used to have an embarrassing amount of trouble getting out of the shower on cold mornings. All I would want to do is sit under the warm water until the water heater ran out. Years ago when I was in school, I would have to get up at the butt crack of dawn. I would stumble half asleep into the bathroom. I wouldn't even turn the light on, and I would shower in the dark, probably still dreaming. And I would spend way too long in the shower. I don't remember where I came up with this idea, but I had to start tricking myself into turning off the water because I just couldn't force myself to get out. So when I was done and inevitably finding myself standing there under the warm water, unable to get out, I would count down from 10 and then turn the water off when I hit 0. However, I started fighting my own systems. I would say 10 Mississippi, super slow, 9 Mississippi, just dragging it out. And then when I eventually hit 0, I would hit the snooze button like on an alarm clock and say, okay, 10 more seconds, just 10 more. I needed a new plan. So from there, I started slowly turning down the temperature on the water, little push by little push, until it eventually got so cold, I was dying to get out and grab a towel to warm up. This is a very silly problem to have, but it was something that was eating time from my life. So I took small actions to try to change that behavior, and it worked. Another story for you, when I was in my final years of college, I discovered a little something called digital sculpting, a form of high-resolution 3D modeling. And I remember the first time I ever saw a digital sculpt. I was in a computer informatics class, couldn't tell you what the class was about, really didn't pay attention because I was too busy on a little website called CG Society. Now, this site doesn't exist anymore, but it was a place for people to share their VFX art, so 3D models, digital paintings, stuff like what I do now. And at the time, I had an interest in 3D animation, hence why I was on this site. And on that site, I saw my first ever digital sculpt. And when I saw that, I said, I don't know what that is, but I want to do that. I bought a book on ZBrush, went through it, then bought another. Then read through their entire software documentation. I watched every video I could find on the tool. There really weren't many back then before I started YouTube, and I learned the ins and outs of the software. And guess what? I was terrible at sculpting. I knew the software so well, but I was still bad at art, which is kind of important. So I made a goal for myself. I had to sculpt one thing every day. It didn't matter if I took 5 minutes to make it or 5 hours, as long as I sat down and just did something. And it worked. I did that every day, and in less than 2 years, I got my first full-time job working in the entertainment industry on toys and amusement park figures. I am extremely proud of what I achieved in such a short amount of time, going from almost no art experience whatsoever to that job in less than 2 years, and I accomplished that because of small actions. If I had said that I need to sculpt a full character every week or a character bust every day, I might not be where I am today. But instead, by focusing on just what came next, buy a book, get started, read just one page today, sculpt just one thing tomorrow, doesn't matter what. By the time I sat down and started working, I found it so much easier to continue. And those little actions built up to a habit and formed skills that I am incredibly grateful to have today. Number 3, ask small questions. One of my favorite things about this book is it boils down most of our problems to one easy to understand idea: fear. Buried deep in our brain is the amygdala, and it's responsible for processing emotion. Asking small questions helps sidestep this part of our brain. Because our brain loves questions, but when those questions become too big, like, how am I going to get a job before the end of the year? Or how am I going to lose weight? Our amygdala steps in and shuts down access to the thinking part of our brain, the cortex. By asking small questions, we sidestep this fight or flight response. What's the smallest step I can take to be more efficient? Or what can I do for 5 minutes today to improve my art? Or even, how can I burn calories in the next 60 seconds? Small questions like these allow the brain to focus on problem solving and eventually action. Ask these questions often enough and you'll find your brain turning them over, eventually generating interesting solutions. And I have found this to be so true in my life. I love going on walks and thinking big ideas, but once I have that big goal in mind, I have to start chopping it up smaller and smaller until I get a question that feels actually manageable. And from those small questions comes creativity. If you've ever felt like creating art, but just can't bring yourself to do it, it's probably because you need to break it down into something smaller. What do you want to draw? What do you need to work on? I don't know. That's fear talking. How can you make that smaller? How can I find something to draw? Can I sit down and draw for a few minutes? Can I draw some simple forms? Can I look up some classes? Ask small questions and you will accomplish more. Do it often enough and your ability to take action will grow fast. Kaizen is something that I have been doing for most of my adult life, but I didn't have the language to describe what I was doing until I read this book. These ideas at a surface level feel almost too simple, and that's the point. Much like building a skyscraper. One nail, one strike with a hammer, one thing at a time. And if you'd like to learn one thing at a time, eventually learning everything I know about digital sculpting, check out the Appeal Academy. There's a link down below where you can find my mentorship program, along with my custom brushes and other courses. Thanks so much for watching, hope you learned something new, and I'll see you in the next one.